The Loop.
The Loop. You have the divine spark. The Loop.
Do or do not. There is no try. The Loop.
Give me your roar.
Hey there, this is Misha, and welcome to episode number 10 of The Loop, the podcast where I interview career coaches and experts to unpack their advice on everything from job interview advice to finding the right role, offer negotiation, finding more meaning in work, and a lot more. Today's guest is Teresa Fung, who was on the Amazon Alexa team as an engineer for several years. She is a trained bar raiser, which, if you don't know what that is, you'll find out in our conversation. And we had a really insightful conversation. She was actually an engineer for several years and then left her full-time work to raise her family and had a 8-year career break to 100% focus on family, which was very inspiring to hear about. And then after her career break, she was able to land a job at Amazon. So she shares the story of how she did that and advice she has for people listening, and also her younger self, and a lot more. We also go over more about the Amazon interview process and sort of expectations around that, some patterns she's seen, and other insights. So a really insightful conversation, really inspiring. I had a lot of fun with this one. And if you are interviewing at Amazon or you are at all interested in getting back into work after having a career gap, I mean, there's so many different angles that we take here. I think you will really enjoy this. So if that sounds interesting, then this is going to be a treat. Hey, Teresa, thanks for joining me.
Hi, Misha. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so I am excited for our conversation today. We have been working together for a bit for like the last year, and you've got a ton of experience at Amazon. I'm super interested to dive more into that, but we were talking before this, and I realized I don't really know your story, and I wanted to hear more from you about that because you've got, from what I understand, you've sort of broken your way into the tech industry and sort of come from a really interesting background. So I would love to maybe start there and see where that leads us.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for asking these questions. I don't get a lot of chance actually start from telling my story. So I'm happy to share. And I think most people knows me from my Amazon position, right?
Mhm.
I was a software manager. I was a bar raiser.
Hmm.
And I have been in the software engineering world for a while. And that's where I ended before I become a coach. But then
Yeah.
as in how I started, well,
You were at Amazon for 7 years, though, right? Or something
yes,
like that. Okay, cool.
that's right. Actually, let me go backwards.
Sure.
Maybe that's easier to follow. So that I last with Amazon for 7 years. But then prior to Amazon, I actually was with a it's not a startup. It's actually a nonprofit organization with, including myself, only 3 people. So it's a huge jump going from nonprofit research base. The group was doing machine learning algorithm, is more into computer vision, natural language processing type research, and I was the application engineer. So I worked with 2 scientists to help productionize their model.
Cool.
So that was a big jump, and to me that was like, it feels like mission impossible right at that time, because I was from this tiny space, tiny world, and Amazon was huge. Right now it's even bigger, but back then it's already very, very big. So to me, it feels like a mission impossible, and I made it. So that to me, just this data point alone already feel that wow, it's a huge achievement. But there are more to that, because prior to working at the nonprofit, I personally had a career break.
Okay.
So it was 8 years long, and I spent that time to work to my family. Right, I get married, I have kids. I actually stay on until my younger kids started kindergarten. So between the 2 boys, right? So that's why how end up is end to end is 8 years long.
Wow. So wait, so were you an engineer? So like, were you an engineer by training, and then you had your kids, and then you just took like an 8 year, like 8 year break essentially?
Yes. So my college degree was in mathematics and computer science.
Okay.
So that is sort of a natural progression actually for me to go into the software engineering world, right? And I attended college in the state in Midwest, and when I graduated, I just moved out here to Silicon Valley because to me, I feel that this is the place to be. This is where the opportunities are. I didn't have a job offer at the time, and I think back in those days, there were internship opportunity, but not as common as like current times.
Mm-hmm.
So that I believe that just being physically in the area is already a benefiting, right? So I moved out here, and things work out just as I hoped, right? I joined the tech industry at the time. I joined Oracle. Moved to Sun Microsystem, and I worked for a few startup. And then I think it's about 5 years into my career, then the economy downturn,
Mm-hmm.
and I was laid off. Well, it is an experience, right? It didn't feel like an experience that time, but it's actually I feel that it's a major growth opportunity for me.
It wasn't on Zoom, right? Like they didn't lay off everyone on Zoom like they do nowadays.
No, no, no.
Okay,
It was
that's
like
good.
call everybody in a meeting, and
Okay,
then
it's
like
better
it
at
was a
least.
startup, so that funding issue, right? So that and that's actually somehow my career took a sharp turn, right?
Mm-hmm.
From working at a tech company, like the big names at the time, to nothing, right? And the economy was bad, and no, not too many people hiring. Um, so I took the opportunity to work on other things, right? And that's how I decided to let's focus on personal side of things. So I built my family, get married, have kids, and actually I'm really glad that I took the time
Mm.
because the kids upbringing, there is actually of course quality time, right? It's good for the kids as well, but then I feel that I'm actually the one who gained the most because it's another learning opportunity, right? Parenting is another learning opportunity, and a lot of the elements, little did I know, but then when I interviewed at Amazon and started there, then I realized that a lot of the learning from raising kids is actually fungible skills into leadership. It's just a different context.
Right.
So, and then during those times that I was completely disconnected with the industry, I did not look at any news. I didn't write
Wow.
any code.
How did you like do that? Because I think a lot of people would be afraid to do that, and I wonder, and I'll just throw it out there. I mean, do you think that it was easier because of like culturally? Obviously, in Asia, I feel like families are closer than in the U.S. Maybe this is like a really big stereotype, but do you think that there was any sort of, was it easier in that way? Was there an expectation, or was it still very difficult for you to really make that decision?
I can say if culture plays a big part. I mean, I originate from Hong Kong, and it's a mix of culture as
That's
well. So I
true.
have the
Okay.
Chinese influence, and I have the British influence.
Okay.
Sometimes I consider myself like a Hong Kong Brit, so it's like a combination of things. So, but then I feel that for me personally, I, it wasn't that difficult because I guess once it was hard in the beginning, right? I don't have a job, and then all of a sudden it's like go from having everything to nothing, like work wise. But then I think once I sorted out my priorities and I decided, hey, this is maybe the time to focus on other stuff, then I feel that moving away from tech at that time is the right thing to do because that doesn't align with the priority at the time.
That makes sense.
So yeah. So I feel it wasn't like as easy, but it's not that super challenging. It's just that I was able to stay focused to what I needed to do at the time.
Yeah. And then how do you go back into the industry after an 8 year break? Because like 1 year break, 2 year break, I mean, people take maternity leave for a year, like that's quite common, but for, 8 years, how do you even put that on your resume? Like, what do you even say?
Hmm. So that's a very good question. The short answer is that I don't put it on my resume. But I get this question a lot. Or how do I explain my career gap, right? Or how do I
Mm-hmm.
explain like this 6 months, not in there, right? At the time, I not gonna lie, I do feel the same way, right? I need to explain, right? Or I need to explain why I also have a disconnect with the industry, or why I want to come back now. But then now that I'm, able to re-enter and have been working at Amazon and be hiring, then what I learned is that these questions is actually less significant than most people think. Like, why is there a career gap? Because from my experience from hiring, when I look at a resume, I look at, does this resume or this person has the relevant skills to my position, right? And often those skills doesn't come from the career gap. So to that sense, that is there a need to explain? It's really a personal reason, right? And the personal reason doesn't contribute to or doesn't influence the decision as such.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, so a lot of time, I feel that, and I actually have many experience with clients as well, that because I was the same, right? That's why I'm sharing this, that when I was in it, then I feel that career gap is everything, right? I was trained as an engineer, right? But the gap somewhat like blindsided me is that, do I have the CS fundamental, computer science fundamental? Yes, I do, right? But then somehow all I look at is the gap, right? I don't look at the fundamentals that I have, right? Do I have relevant experience? I do, right? I work at a tech company and I work at like web application, all those stuff. But then for some reason, I just keep thinking, how do I explain this gap? So, and this experience actually helped me now to have conversation with my clients, because the gap ended up become a mental barrier, and it's a self-inflicted like barrier in a sense.
Yeah.
And often, so many times, that is it that people doesn't have the experience, doesn't have the skills. It's not true. Many people are very capable, but then somehow, because having this just big thing like blocking their view, they forgot about how good they are.
I wonder if your experience. I mean, especially since it was a much longer break than most people, right? Most people you're talking to probably have like a few months where you're like, well, I did it for 8 years and I still got a job at Amazon, right? I wonder, like, I think what comes to mind when I hear about a career gap, for a year or a few years, and I think what a lot of people think is that you sort of forget the skills, right? Like the industry moves forward and maybe you have some foundation, but things change so fast that, uh, those skills maybe are no longer relevant. And, but you're saying, well, that's not necessarily true. You still have like the core skills to figure it out. Right. Or what do you think about that?
So I think there are two parts of this. One is the core skills. It's just like math, right? Once you learn addition, subtraction, those skills stays, right? But then there's this other side, that is the application, how you like environment change, right? Maybe in the past we like to do just only addition, but now we add multiplication into the formula, right? So it's the application that might change.
Okay.
So to that sense, that what I learned from my experience is that, well, it does take practice, right? It's not like I go from sending my kids to school and then boom, a job at Amazon, right? It does take practice in between. And and the way I get there, I actually started out as a part-time helping a small company with actually not a technical position to begin with. It's more like a project management, but then it's a SaaS application, right? So that's actually to that sense that the technical skills requirements are a little lower, right? Because I'm not as hands-on, but then I do have the knowledge to be able to understand the projects, able to communicate with the client. And that experience actually gave me new skills, new experience. Because in the past, I just stay in my cube, do my job, but now I'm actually client-facing, right? And a lot of communication between the bosses and the tech team and the client as well. So that's how that's my first step, somewhat inching back into the industry. And then as I pick up the project, and then there are opportunities here and there that I actually volunteered. I raised my hand saying that, hey, there's this issue, and the tech team was offshore. So sometimes there's this time difference that we need to wait. And I say, hey, since we're waiting anyway, how about you let me give it a try? Right. So that I start from, maybe trying a few bugs. And then I remember volunteering to do a whole new UI prototype, bringing new libraries and technology, stuff like that. And eventually, we actually, at the time that it was a number of years back. And then we were actually working on the iOS app on the very first version of iPad.
Oh, wow.
So the offshore team did the first version, but then now the clients wanted a second version. And the team was discussing, hey, should we outsource it to offshore again? Because there were some challenges there as well. And then I say, hey, looking at the requirements, what we need to do, let me give it a shot. And I actually took on that V2 and they delivered that V2 version by myself, right? But that actually gave me the chance to take my hands back into the code, actually learn some new skills, right? Using the I was with the web SaaS application more, and the mobile development was new to me at the time, right? So I actually get to flex my fingers, like muscles a little bit, and just from there, that give me, I think a lot of time is to give me more confidence that, hey, I still have the skills, right? And the fundamental or the basics are there. Now I know I get the chance to apply them again, even though it's a different context, but I'm able to do it. And from there, it's actually paved the way to getting to the next job, work for the nonprofit, and then getting to Amazon.
Right. So I think one of the big takeaways that in the beginning there is that it's not like you just, you're working, you're a mom for 8 years, then you're okay, now I'm going to get a job at Amazon, and then you got a job at Amazon. You obviously, you got a role as a project manager and smaller company, started rebuilding those skills. You were then raising your hand for other projects, being proactive, and then eventually, after I don't know how many years, 2 or 3 years or something, then you were able to have sort of that toolkit again, and then apply for a bigger tech company like Amazon.
That is correct. So that is how I paved my path. However, now what I learned is that when I work with my clients, I actually help several clients that they are actually in the career break right now, 2 to 3 years. And the next thing is an offer from Amazon, right? It's that direct jump. And looking back to what I did is that paving a path, I'm playing it safe, right? But then I also feel that, why didn't I just try to apply to Amazon back then, right? I didn't have the confidence, right? And I didn't have anybody to tell me that, hey, you actually have it, and someone to help me remove that mental barrier and help me see my own strength. So I think that was something that's missing, and that is something that I believe now I'm in a position that I'm able to help people see that, hey, it's actually doable, it's possible. We did it, right? I actually help a number of clients did it that way as well.
Wow. So it's just a belief there that's like, hey, there's no way they're going to hire me, so why even bother applying, right? Whereas actually, you don't know if that, you don't know what they're going to say. So
exactly. The thing is that you don't know what they think, right? From the applicant perspective, that's just always see that, career break is actually one of the mental barrier. I think the other ones that's very common is believing that their environment didn't have a chance, right? Either their company
believing
is too
what?
small.
What do you mean?
Believing they didn't have a chance. So example is like maybe they are not in the tech company, right? Maybe they are in something completely different. Maybe in I don't know, like a hospitality industry, or they are a company that's so small that they don't feel that it can measure up, right? Because they feel that Amazon is an unachievable goal, right? So I think these are the most common ones that I came across. But the thing is that when they feel that it's not good enough, but they already judged their own experience, right? And when they already judged, then they hold themselves back. How about we just present who you are, right? That's how I work with my client. Let's present who you are to Amazon and let them decide, because you don't know their scope, you don't know the specific skills that they actually may see a lot of value. So by steering them back actually to focus on themselves rather than saying that, hey, it's an interview, I think this is what they want, but I don't think I have what they want to give them. So then they give them nothing, right? When you give them nothing, that's nothing that they can work with. Versus we focus on themselves, the person, so that we show that everything that they've done, all the skills and strength and experience, then we let them decide, right? And Amazon, now going back to when I was hiring manager at BarRaiser, and I look at these evidence that I gathered through the interview, is that okay? Do we have do we find BarRaising evidence that's matching, right? If it's yes, then the offer will come, right? But there's this whole variety of possibilities besides a straight yes, right? If it's not an exact match, well, what can we work with, right? Do we have information to tell me what we can work with? And the thing being the bar raiser in the loop is that the bar raiser represents a company, the hiring manager represents a team. So very often the hiring manager, the focus is that, okay, does this person fit my need, right? So very specific yes or no, usually very straightforward. As a bar raiser, I need to see that, okay, if let's say this person doesn't fit this team's or this particular position's need, but what is it that we can, what value do we see, what strengths do we see, and where can we put this person? And that's why the bar raiser is part of the role is to represent the company to see where we can fit this person, right? And very often that even though it may be the offer may be a no for that particular position, but then because the person give me more information, right? Now I know more about this person. Then we say, okay, why is this a no? Is it because of the skills, or is it maybe the person matching skills, but the domain? Let's say the team has a maybe a computer vision focus, and that person maybe have a different AI area focus, right? Then maybe it's a domain mismatch to the team, but Amazon is so big, right? Then part of the bar raiser's job is to, hey, call out this information and work with the recruiter, say, hey, where can we recommend this person, right? So in the end, that person still will receive an offer, but just not the original one.
Yeah. It'd be good to define a little bit more in detail there, because you were talking about bar raisers and everyone may not know exactly what that is. Could you share a little bit about exactly what that role is, what that means at Amazon?
Sure, of course. So for every on-site interview, which is the final loop stage, there is a bar raiser. And the loop usually composed of maybe 5 to 6 people. And then there's the hiring manager and the bar raiser in there. And these two are the decision maker.
Okay.
So the bar raiser is there to represent the company, like I mentioned earlier, versus the hiring manager represent the team. All right. So because Amazon's hiring has this bar raising concept, so the bar raiser is there actually is more to govern the interview panel. I know a lot of people think that, oh, bar raiser is a tough interview, right? So that if I go into the interview, it's gonna be super hard, right?
That's the
it's
image.
Actually, that's the image, yes.
Yeah.
The way I see it is that when you get the bar raiser session is actually easier because the bar raiser is a very skilled interviewer, right? So the conversation usually would go a lot smoother. The bar raiser session is no different from any other session, right? It's just another interview session. And a big part of the duty is actually more to govern the loop, to make sure everybody gather the right information, right? Everybody make a recommendation based on the data that they collected. Make sure the quality of the data is matching the bar. And then also to some of these hiring decisions, right? Like, so back to the example that I was referring to is the hiring manager make decision based on representing the team, right? So the question, the answer is that, okay, does this person suit the needs for my team, right? Versus the bar raiser is representing the company. So the question is broader. Often is that does this person fit into the company, right? Does it bar raising at the company level? If not for this team, where can we, utilize this person, or where can we assign this person to a team that this person can shine?
Got it. That makes sense. And you mentioned something about sharing information, I think is the way you phrased it. And if you are, if you're a candidate and you're interviewing at Amazon and you're not a fit for that position, the bar raiser might suggest you for another role. But what can you do to make it easier for that to happen, or is it something that just like naturally happens based on their assessment?
So I think that goes back to the interview prep, right?
Okay.
And I think sometimes um, when they prepare for the interview, they I think it's human nature that they think, oh, this is what they need, and then they define an invisible box that they think that, oh, I need to put things that fit into that box. So
Mhm.
that anything that outside the box that they don't share, right? But then uh, to when you go to the other side of the table is that you don't know what my box look like, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes I may not have a box. I just want to in general know about you,
Mhm.
so that when they go into framing that as a box, then they limit themselves what they can share, and often they only present bits and pieces of information
Mhm.
that either the story might be less complete. I think it's more often that it reduced the scope of the story because they didn't
Mhm.
know some of the other information actually contribute to the scope.
Mhm.
So that's why I feel that a lot of time just focus on your own experience. If things happen, who do you talk to or how things play out, what's the impact? Just focus on your experience rather than thinking what they want to hear. So this
Got
way
it.
then is maximizing sharing your experience and putting the spotlight on the candidate themselves, right? And this is usually will bring out a lot more information than they intended, and in a way that is actually help them with the current interview process and maybe beyond.
Can we dive into something specific example, because I'm trying to think like if I'm going in for an interview with Amazon and you're asking me a question about a difficult time with my team, I can give you a very specific example because I'm going in for a leadership position. So how would I change that example to show more of myself, or to not sort of put myself in the box, as you say? Like what would I do differently, or what would I ask myself to make it more open or broad, or however you would describe it?
So let me give you an example. It's a slightly different context. So let's say there was a time that there's an obstacle in delivering a project, right? Uh, and then by working through this obstacle, then part of the solution is maybe I'm able to get my hand on an additional piece of software that I didn't have before, right? So, and that piece of software helped me actually able to move past the obstacle and deliver my project and meeting a deadline, right? So, if you look at just this, then yes, there's the obstacle, things resolved. This is delivery result, right? And then that's it, right? It feels complete. But
Hmm.
then usually when then I would ask questions like, okay, now you have this additional piece of software, right? Have you used it beyond this solving this particular problem, right? Because it's something new that you didn't have before. Do you utilize it further, right? Now you have extended impact,
Hmm.
right? Or now you have this software. Have you maybe other teams also adopted them, right?
Hmm.
If there are other teams using them because you brought it in, then that's an extended influence, right?
Hmm.
In a way that immediately the scope go bigger, right? But then because the box originally thinking that, oh, obstacle you need to resolve, so that I just focus on the obstacle, I resolve and done. Then the box is only this small, right?
I see.
But then by thinking beyond that, what's the new information and what else has it done, right? What's it have
Mm.
you utilize it, and who have you actually also benefiting from this effort, like down the road, maybe not immediately, maybe like two project cycle down,
Hmm.
right? Or maybe it lead to a new initiative. So these are all relevant into your story scope, and a lot of people may not realize that. So
Mm.
that's what I mean by like framing into a box and trying to just fit into it, and then they
Mm.
miss out all this other good stuff.
Got it. Yeah, I think that makes sense, and part of it is also just you want to not take 10 minutes to answer the question, so you want to be really concise, but then I guess you don't need another 10 minutes to provide all that context. You can just share it
Right,
in a few
right.
sentences if you've prepared that ahead of time and you sort of know the story yourself. Um, but I had a question just digging in more into bar raisers, because
Hmm.
you said that they're very good interviewers and
Hmm.
they're not necessarily harder, but I've met a few bar raisers, including you,
Mm-hmm.
and there's something about bar raisers. It can be a little bit intimidating, and
Ah.
I think the reason is, and I was thinking about it, I was like, why is this conversation, not our conversation right now, but I just remember in the past, why why was I a little bit nervous in this conversation? And then I realized what it was is just really good questions. And it's like you just ask, or bar raisers just ask really good questions. And it makes you think like, whoa, okay, no one's asked me that before, or like, or I've been
Okay.
avoiding that question. And so crap, now I have to answer it. So I think it's not like you said. They're very nice, and pleasant people,
Mm-hmm.
and you may have a great conversation, but actually still fail that interview, right? Because you just didn't do a good job. But you may think that it went really well. So I, don't know, I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to comment on that. I feel like bar raisers are really nice and experienced, but also like pretty tough with their questions if you're not ready. So
I think we become really good at going straight to the point, so
yeah,
that might come to some of the uneasiness that oh, you go so
yeah,
direct, like
cut to the
straight
chase.
at it,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
cut to the chase, exactly. But then I feel that often, um, because of the experience that we have, right, we do so many interviews, so that I think I get a pretty good sense what I need, so that I just go straight to it. I
Mm-hmm.
think maybe earlier on in my bar raiser journey that I do maybe need to go around a little bit to, and it's a learning process for me too. So
Mm-hmm.
that to see, okay, what is it that I need? What should be the follow-up question? How do I phrase that follow-up questions to lead you on, right? So that you can give me what I need. Um,
Mm.
so I guess maybe that's that's causing some anxiety there.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I do have a number of people getting really nervous about follow-up questions as well, and they
Okay.
feel that, oh, why is it so tedious, or why are they grilling me? Um, and I want to take this opportunity to share this perspective from my side, from the interviewer side, um, because from the interviewer, they actually want to get that information from you, right? It's their duty at the at the loop, right? They're there to get the information from you, and they want to get as much information from you as possible, so that they have things that they can present on behalf of you to the at the debrief meeting,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's why it's often, if um, the follow-up questions, think of it as a way that they are trying their best effort to get more information from you in order to help you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, the follow-up questions can come because maybe we haven't reached to the necessary components or evidence. Sometimes it could be, okay, we need more deeper level information, right? And that's why the follow-up questions, it feels like, oh, why do they keep coming?
Mm.
But as they keep coming, then it's actually a signal for you to know that, hey, they really want to get that information for you to help you, right? And we are not quite getting there, because if the interviewer get everything they need, there will be very little follow-up questions.
Yeah, but it's also like, isn't it a bit worrying or a red flag if the interviewer asks no follow up questions? If you're just giving your examples and they're just sort of checking boxes or something, like I feel like that's probably a red flag because they've just decided like, okay, like you're completely giving the wrong examples, or am I just making that up? Like how does it usually play out?
Keep in mind that the bar raiser or any interviewer, they also need training, right? Some interviewer might be a beginner in their interviewing
How do you become
journey.
a bar raiser, by the
So,
way? What do you have to do to get that role? Like, are you
oh,
selected for it, or
yeah, we need nomination, and you do need to meet certain criteria, like how experienced you already are in interviewing, and then
okay?
you nominated into the program, and then went through this rigorous training that they just put you in all kinds of situations. And then finally there's a like exit exam ish process to get certified.
Rigorous training. You laughed when you said that. Like, what did they do? Did they just have like 10 bar raisers grill you at the same time or
Oh, no,
something?
no, no. No, it's more of like a buddy system, right? So you start
Oh,
from
okay.
shadowing, right? And then you become a then it's still shadowing, but then I take the lead with
Hmm.
my trainer, on my back watching me. It's like, ooh, like very
Yeah.
nervous, right? But then also that I laugh because we usually think interviewer the process is pretty similar, go in, ask questions, stuff like that. But then there are a variety of scenarios that could happen that it become very interesting, and sometimes it does, you know, get me thinking. Okay, how can I better handle things, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes it might be the interview sessions. Sometimes it can be the debrief, right? The team might get into some heated conversation, and I need to facilitate that conversation. So that's why I love, because it's like all kinds of a good variety of experience in there, but it's very interesting.
So you have to go through this training, and obviously most interviewers are not bar raisers at Amazon. How many bar raisers are there, or like what percentage of interviewers or employees are bar raisers, if you have that information?
Oh, um, well, my information probably not up to date anymore.
Okay.
It used to be about 8 to 10% of the corporate population. Um, but then Amazon is growing so fast,
Hmm.
right? But then it's still a very small population you can see,
Hmm.
and every interview loop needs a bar raiser in order to happen.
Hmm.
So then you can imagine it's actually a very important role and significant into the process. And bar
Yeah.
raiser is also a volunteer role, right? Every bar raiser have their day job to do as well.
Yeah, you don't get
So
paid extra to be a bar raiser.
no, yeah, that's why it's the bar raiser community are people who are very dedicated to this process.
Yeah. Yeah, they're serious. They're serious, and they enjoy. I guess they enjoy interviewing.
Yeah, and they're very passionate about helping people, helping teams to hire, and helping candidates to able to um, you know get this opportunity.
Let's go back to what we were talking about and you getting the job at Amazon. So we, we we didn't actually talk about how you got the job at Amazon. So what did you do after you were working? You were working as a project manager. You were taking on some new opportunities. You worked for a nonprofit. How did you how did you make the next move into Amazon?
So I got an opportunity to contract with them first.
Okay.
Um, it's I think I joined in like September, which now I speculate. I never confirm that. So first they initially hired. I joined in September.
Hmm.
It's a very short contract. It's only 3 months,
Hmm.
and I speculate that because there are some budget left over, so that they get someone to just help clear the plate. Extra pair of hands. So when I joined, there are some. It's more like utility person, right? Wherever it needs me, wherever bug fixes, stuff like that. That's what I do, right? Um, but then the thing is that um, when I'm in that environment, that's actually helped me see how much my own personality fit into their culture, because Amazon is all about customer obsession. It's about ownership. And when I was in there, even though my assignment was, hey, fix this, fix that, right?
Hmm.
But then I can fix you know just that particular issue. But then what I see is that, why are we doing things this way,
Hmm.
right? Why are we looping millions of records? Why in it was in Java, so that and with that volume, and I wonder, why were we doing that? What's the additional thing that we have to process at the application level versus at the data level, right? Because all
Hmm.
this data flowing in and out, right? So that I naturally just become really curious, and then I think I ask way too many questions to the team, so that eventually they say, hey, why don't you give it a try, right? If we don't do it in uh, this way,
Hmm.
what would you do? Like, in what
Hmm.
way will you do? And I completely changed the way the application. I changed the application logic basically, um, and I showed them, hey, instead of thinking processing at a higher level, the data we
Hmm.
can a good chunk of them actually we can keep it at the lower level, and then we have the separation. And it's a new angle that I guess team didn't think of, um, and that's how I, put my ideas in there. I raise my hand to show them one version, and they like what they see, and that's how I gradually increase the scope of my work, which they did not intend to give me to begin with. Right. And
That's really interesting.
eventually,
I see this
yeah.
theme popping up in your career a lot.
So maybe I'm just too nosy. That's to say, hey, can I try this? Can I try that? But I'm glad that it was Amazon, because it is a quality that they appreciate. So that it's never like, oh, you're crossing boundaries or you are doing overstepping someone else. Is that if you see something that bring value to the team, to the project, take initiative and give it a try. And that's what I did. So eventually, my 3 months project translate into a headcount, right? They actually allocated headcount and recruited me. And I did went through the same interview process as well.
Very cool. Very cool. So this I've seen this happen a few times where Amazon's one example, but also Google hires a lot of temp and contract employees, and that's actually sort of, it's almost like a hidden door. I mean, it's not hidden, but people oftentimes want to just go for that full time position, but you don't necessarily have to start in a permanent role. As long as like you do raise your hand for opportunities and you're proactive, then you increase your opportunities of potentially getting a full-time role. But at the same time, you could have just gone for a full-time role. Or what do you think? Like, do you think you had a shot at a different type of position that was permanent?
So I believe I did. I had the shot, but then again, back then, I I was the same mental barrier that I didn't think I have a chance because of the everything, right? I have this gap. I'm now in this 3 people company and it's Amazon, right?
Yeah.
So and that's why even though I went through like step by step, and I'm glad that I get this opportunity um, and able to turn into full time. But then this whole path helped me realize that yes, this is one path, but it didn't have to be this way,
Mm.
right? You can actually go from a gap to a full-time position, right? Given that you understand you understand what it takes, and you are aware of your mental barrier and work through them. So a lot of time people just let that mental barrier to stop them, and then become self-sabotaging.
Do you remember your interview process at all?
Oh, it's the same. It's the same.
Yeah.
Even though I was already there, but then I was a contractor, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
it's still considered as external hire. So it's still like 5 sessions with the hiring manager, with the bar raiser, all the technical sessions.
So let's talk a little bit about the interview process, because I think there's a ton of information online. There's a ton of videos around, and I mean, Amazon has their leadership principles. They have information on how to prepare, but of course, everyone has access to that, right? So the playing field is quite level from that perspective. What kind of advice do you have for people that are going in for their first interview, or maybe even their final interview, that you find could be really effective? Maybe from having coached so many people, you've perhaps noticed some patterns of beliefs or mistakes or pitfalls or whatever. What can you share around the interview process?
Mm-hmm. Right. So I have a perspective that's actually developed from serving both role as a hiring manager and the bar raiser. So, um, and I'm like you said, there are many different information and message out there, right? So this is my perspective, and usually, um, if I share with someone and that person feels it makes sense, then I think it's a good indicator that we can work together. And the difference is that for the phone interview round, the bar raiser doesn't come in yet, right? It's usually just you and the hiring manager or someone from the hiring team. And the way I see it is that even though yes, there are leadership principles questions in the first round, phone interview round, um, but then what does the leadership principle story tells me, right? If I receive one, so usually it means it's related to the company culture, right? So let's say if you interview if I'm interviewing you, right, you give me a story, then I say, hey, Misha probably will fit well into into Amazon, but I need to know whether you can do the job first, right? So that a lot of the focus I feel at the phone around people put like immediately look at the leadership principles and put the stories and a lot of time and effort into that, and they forgot that, hey, you need to show me that you can do the job first. So
Okay.
that I feel that at the phone interview round, usually it's the role related information, right? Role fit related competency and scope has a relatively higher influence moving to the next round.
Is that with a hiring
That way.
manager usually, or is this with a recruiter, you mean? Or
A
both?
hiring manager,
A hiring manager, okay.
right? So that often when people reach out to me saying, hey, I have a phone interview coming up, I have all my LP stories ready, then usually the next question is that, what about your role related materials, right? Have you prepared that? And say, well, the recruiter didn't mention it. Well, here's why, right? If I can't tell that you can do the job, then I don't know whether I can proceed you to the loop, right? And that's why from the phone interview round, my advice is come from a hiring manager perspective, that let's focus on preparing role related materials. Let's prepare your experience, showcasing that yes, you can do the job, you have done the job, and you are a good fit to the job first. The leadership principles, usually the major focus is to the final loop prep. Reason being, and at that time, then the LPs and the role related competency, they have comparable influence. So almost like 50-50, right? So give you
really?
another
Okay.
example. Usually it happens that way. So that let's say for software engineer, right, SDEs, they proceed to the loop. The loop has 4 technical sessions, so that they spend 100% of their time practicing on lead code or other technical exercise. But then when I say, what about the leadership principles? They say, oh, I just put maybe 2 hours into it. Then we have a problem there, because even if you ace all the technical questions, you're only hitting like a half mark, right? We still have the leadership principles, and the leadership principles have can influence the other half. And why didn't we put this same effort into it, right? And I think a lot of people might not realize that. So that my my strategy usually is phone interview round focus on role fit related material prep. Final loop, we then focus a lot on LPs.
Yeah, that makes more sense, because I think if you're just going for the very first or second interview with that hiring manager, and it doesn't make sense to be spending dozens of hours preparing these stories and practicing them when it's only like a 1 hour call. And the hiring manager, I'd love to get your insight into this. Like, the hiring manager has the biggest pain point, right? Like, they want to hire this person, they want to hire you, they're on your side, right? Like, they're struggling with their team, and this is why either someone left or the team is growing, so they need you. And so they're going to try and be in your favor unless you give them a reason, a really obvious reason not to be. But once you get to the loop, that's where I feel like it's a little bit more, I don't want to say it's more impartial, but maybe like there's people not in your team, and they're really just looking at the assessment. They may not even be in your team, right? So they don't have that same struggle or that same pain point.
I think that the main difference is the first round usually with the hiring manager, and hiring manager representing the team, right? So a lot of focus on the team's need or the role specific skills and experience that way. When you get to the loop, then it's actually hiring for the company, not just for the team itself. And that's why we have the bar raiser come in. We have people from maybe not from the team, maybe from cross-functional team, or just from random sometimes even, right? And that front, then they're looking at the like a well-rounded coverage, right? Do you how well do you is your experience in terms of the role-related competencies? How well do you fit into the culture? Then that's the leadership principles coverage, and that's what is the Amazon process, right? And that's why often people might not have a good understanding. And I don't blame them, right? Because they're interviewing, right? But then these are the subtle differences between the 2 rounds, and that's why. And I feel that a lot of time people might actually reverse the focus, right? In the phone interview round, they look at the LPs, and then when they get to the loop, then you look at the role related and forgot about the LPs. So
Yeah.
that my strategy usually guide people back to where they should be.
And you were saying when you were talking about like 50-50 role and then leadership principles or culture, was that before or is that still sort of how it is? Like what's the like when you're going through the final round for a non-technical position, isn't a lot of it more around the leadership principles or is it still a mix?
It's generally still a mix, right?
Okay.
So I
Okay.
actually I want to call out that there are some roles. Let's say maybe a account manager, right? So it's not like engineering, you have a very technical piece in there,
Hmm.
but then the account manager position, they still have their own technical or the functional duties, right?
Yeah.
So, and then how do we get that information? Well, the question will come in the form of situational questions,
Hmm.
right? So that some often there's like a blurry line between situational response versus a behavioral questions, because the way you respond is still using star format, right?
Hmm.
But then what the interviewer look for, LP questions look for your behavior specifically, versus situational is look for, how you do things, right? Let's say if I ask you, hey, how do you manage your account, right?
Hmm.
Then what are the steps and procedures, and in your from your past experience? Then that's less about your individual behavior, but more into how you do your job, right? So
Right.
the way you present is very similar, but there are subtle differences what elements they're looking for.
Got it. So this is really insightful because I think, like you said, if people are spending way too much time preparing in the beginning, it's could be a waste of time and just not the right focus. Are there any other? I mean, I feel like we could talk about this for many hours. So I want to be conscious of time. I think we have a few more minutes here, but are there any other big tips that you give people coming in when you're starting to coach them now that you see this pattern where maybe a lot of people might make this mistake or might benefit from this strategy that you have.
I think the common pattern is that they don't know what to focus on, right?
Mm,
And they don't know the boundary. Like you said, that leadership principles information is available online, right? It's everywhere, but then it's still, when it comes to putting your materials together, you don't know
mm,
what to focus or what directions, right? So often, I think a lot of very common is that since people don't know the boundaries, then they go to all direction and try to do everything, and in a way that you know whatever materials come in is lack focus, right? And I think sometimes people prepare like, I don't know, 30, 50, 60 stories, but then which one is your best story, right? Chances are your interviewer, you're not going to use all of them, right? And if you're not going to use all of them, why do you prepare all of them when you can actually channel all your effort into preparing the best one, or a few which is a good scope, and it will move the needle that way.
the
So a
quality.
lot of time is the quality, yes,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of time is lacking focus, and that's why working with a coach, not just myself, but then I think majority of the coaches, because they can give you that guidance that, hey, where should you focus? What direction should we work on? Or sometimes gives you more step-by-step instruction, so that then you feel that, okay, now I know what I'm working towards. Where's my target, right? It's not just going
Mhm.
random.
Got it. Got it. And then like when you're talking to people and you're coaching them through this process and practicing interviews, are there any like what's the sort of where's the line, the cutoff line for you in terms of helping this person? Because if someone comes in and they're talking to you and you're like, wow, this person is definitely not a fit for Amazon. There's like no way they're gonna get a job. Do you just do you just make that snap judgment because you're so experienced, right? You've hired so many people. So do you just say like, okay, sorry, man, like this is not going to work out, or do you like coach them a little bit and sort of see where you can get them? Like, how do you deal with that?
Ah, so whether they are a good fit for Amazon or not, well, I well let me this way, because I'm not in the interview panel, right?
Yeah,
Not in their interview panels, it's not up to me to judge. So
sure.
that my job is to assist them, right, to their needs, to help them uh get to the loop, right? Be prepared to the loop. But then your question is that how do I know whether if the client is a good fit, or is a good
Mm,
engagement? like working with me. That I usually explain upfront, very direct, that I have an approach. There are some other approach, and I also put this on my profile as well to help people understand, because my approach, it is an approach. It works for many people, but does it work for you? That is something that I would need people to be open-minded, to really ask themselves, hey, does it make sense? Because I do have experience with people that they come to me because they see that, oh, you're a bar raiser, you work for you have all this experience, right? You must be the best. So that when I explain this is my approach, and I can see obviously that that person might not may not feel comfortable, right? Or may have a lot of doubt in there, and then usually the question will come is, hey, like, oh, but the recruiter said this, right? And you are saying that, right? So that, and that actually tells me that then it might not be a good fit for, like, between me and this person, just this particular engagement, because my approach doesn't fit that person's preferences, right? And there are other approaches that can help that person or better suit, and I usually upfront explain it very openly, so that to make them understand that, hey, it's okay that if they decided to this is not the right fit for them, it's okay, because I want the best for them as well, right? And the last thing I want is that we start to engage, and then halfway through then realize that, oh, it really didn't work out, then it's time already wasted, right? And the interview is coming up as well. So that's usually how I at least from my side, to assess whether this is we are a good fit in terms of client and coaches.
So is there just a little bit more on the approach? Because like you said,
Mm-hmm.
there's many different approaches, and I'm wondering, can you talk about that? Because like, what does that mean when someone comes in and you explain your
Mm-hmm.
approach, and you're like, well,
Mm-hmm.
actually, this is not the right fit for you,
Mm-hmm.
but there's these other approaches. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how are those different?
Right. So just common ones, right? There is like the question bank approach. So people look up the question list and then prepare a response to that. Right. Some people like that because they feel that they know what to expect, right? They know what the questions look like. There is the other ones that I think usually the recruiter information include, that is that prepare maybe 3 story per LPs. So it's more like a peanut butter spread. Um, um, to me, it is more like quantity driven, and some people actually feel comfortable this way because they feel that they have more materials that they can choose from. They have a lot in their pocket, and that gives them comfort and confidence that way, right? So that's why I say go by individual's preference. My approach focus on the person's experience, so that I usually guide you to look at your best experience, best story for the LPs, right? On that front, then we might end up with just 1 or 2 stories, usually 1 for each LPs. And you see that there's a quantity difference in there, right? So it's almost like quantity versus quality. And some people feel uneasy on that because they feel that, why do I have only this little, right? I want more, right? And there's nothing wrong with it, right? But then we go back to your individual preference, because if having less in your pocket that makes you feel uncomfortable, then maybe some other approach is better suited, right? And some people feel that it works really well because they know what they have in the pocket is the best quality, right? And then that's, I think that usually works really well, and that also maximizes our chance to succeed as well.
Yeah, it's super interesting. You talk about these different approaches, and
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had the data, and I don't, because I think there's so many variables, like
Right.
individual preference, skill set, experience, and the interviewers, the company. But I wonder, which one of these is like the best, right? Or is it just? I mean, it just depends, right? But it'd be
Right,
cool to
right.
know
So
or to see that.
yeah, so I don't feel that it's an apple to apple comparison, because
Yeah.
each has their pros and cons, and then also go with the individual personality and preferences
Mm,
that way, right? So that's why I don't feel that I need to avoid talking about these other approaches, right? It's not like a direct conflict or competition. It's just
mm,
different. And that's why, usually during the meet and greet sessions, that I would first thing bring it up that, hey, there are these other approach, and I'd like you to be open-minded to hear my approach and see if it works for you. It's okay if you feel that it's not, but then if you feel that it makes sense, then we can work together that way.
I love that. All right. Well, I think we're coming up on time here, Teresa. We've covered a lot, and you shared your story and also just a ton of insight. So I think it's been really interesting talking to you. And before we wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to leave us with? Any other tips or anything else that you'd like to say?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This hour went by so fast. I really enjoyed the conversation. Um, um, Tips wise, I think that how do I put it? From based on my experience observation, so many people very competent, right? Good experience. So just believe in yourself, right?
Mm,
If you feel that, oh, Amazon is so far-fetched, well, believe in yourself, give it a shot,
mm.
right? Don't be like me, though. I take longer time and pay my very safe path, but actually now we have coaches here to help you, right? Just give it a try, right? You usually, you are so much more than you think you are.
Awesome. That's good. That's very, very good advice. Very inspirational too. So, um, all right, Teresa. Well, I really enjoyed this. I hope we can do it again. I feel like we can. We just scratched the surface. I mean, we're talking about bar raisers for like 20 minutes. I feel like so. I think we could. Yeah, we could talk a lot longer as well. So, yeah. Thanks so much for your time, and hope to have you on here again soon.
Yeah, let's explore, right? And thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Teresa. I learned a lot from her. There's a lot of stuff I didn't know, and I've spoken to Teresa many times, so it was really the first time she shared her story with me. So that was really cool to hear about. And and look, as she was saying in the conversation, if you vibe with her style, if it speaks to you, it makes sense. If her approach makes sense, and you do want some help with planning your career, pivoting your career, getting into tech, interviewing at Amazon or another big tech company, then feel free to reach out to her. I will, as usual, link to her profile and LinkedIn profile in the show notes so you can check that out. Definitely encourage you to do that. And otherwise, I would love to hear from you if you have any comments or feedback on this episode. This is the 10th episode. I've got a few more planned for this month. So a lot of them, I would say like 50-50, like 50% are around interviews and then 50% are kind of more general around careers and less interview specific. So yeah, if there's a specific topic that you would like me to explore, then feel free to reach out. My contact info is in the notes. So well, that about wraps it up for today. And hope you have a great rest of the week.